My sister's husband yelled at me to leave my own beach house. I thought he was joking, until I realized he meant it. I couldn't believe someone I considered family would treat me like this in my own home. I had been looking forward to this weekend for months. The beach house in Cape Cod had always been a place of peace for me, a place where Marin and I spent countless summers growing up. I thought visiting would bring back all those happy memories, but the moment I stepped inside, everything changed. Dax, Marin's husband, was standing in the living room with that smirk he always wore when he thought he was in charge. "You need to leave," he said, his voice sharp. "This house isn't yours anymore. It's mine." I froze. My mind scrambled. Did he really just say that? My own home. How could he think he had the right to speak to me like that? I opened my mouth to reply, but the words caught in my throat. Dax didn't wait for an explanation. He repeated himself, his tone colder this time, like he meant every word. Marin was standing behind him, her eyes avoiding mine. I searched for any sign that she would step in, defend me, or at least tell him he was wrong, but there was nothing. Just silence. A pit formed in my stomach as the reality sank in. The sister I trusted, the family I loved, was letting this happen. I backed away slowly, my hands trembling. The house, filled with so many childhood memories, suddenly felt foreign. Every picture on the wall, every worn-out couch cushion, every corner of the kitchen reminded me of laughter, summer evenings, and late-night talks with Marin. Now it all felt tainted by Dax's words, by his arrogance. I couldn't believe I was standing there, hurt and confused, feeling like an outsider in a place I had every right to call home. It was a betrayal I hadn't seen coming, and it cut deeper than anything I had imagined. I realized then that this weekend wasn't going to be about relaxation or nostalgia. It was going to be about figuring out how someone could turn family into an enemy and how I could survive the storm that was about to hit. Marin and I had always been close. Growing up, we were inseparable, sharing secrets, dreams, and even silly little arguments that never lasted long. Our parents' beach house was our safe place, a place where we could be ourselves without anyone telling us what to do. Every summer, we would run along the shore, collect seashells, and spend nights talking about our plans for the future. Those memories made the house feel like a part of me, like it carried pieces of our childhood in every corner. When our parents passed, I inherited half of the house. It was supposed to be a way to keep us connected, to honor everything we had shared. Dax knew this, but somehow he acted as if it didn't matter. He walked into my space, my home, and acted like he had the right to claim it. I remembered the first time I met him. He seemed charming then, funny in a quiet way, but over time, something had changed. I thought back to the early days of their marriage. Marin had confided in me about the struggles they faced, about arguments and doubts, and I had always been there for her. I even tried to help Dax when he was frustrated, offering advice, or just listening when he needed it. I had tried to support both of them, to make their life easier, and now it felt like all that care meant nothing. Sitting in the living room, I felt a storm of emotions. Part of me wanted to stay calm, to act like nothing was wrong, but another part burned with anger. How could someone I trusted so much treat me like an intruder in my own home? Every memory of laughter with Marin, every late-night talk about dreams and secrets, seemed to clash with the tension in the room now. I clenched my fists, trying to remind myself that I had every right to be here. The house belonged to me just as much as it did to Marin, and no one, not even Dax, could take that away. But the anger simmered beneath the surface, growing stronger with every passing second. I realized that this wasn't just about a house. It was about respect, trust, and betrayal. And deep down, I knew I couldn't just sit and let it slide. Something had to change, but I had to be careful. Every move mattered now, and the person I was dealing with had already shown how far he was willing to go. I couldn't believe what was happening. Dax didn't just ask me to leave. He humiliated me in front of Marin. His voice was loud, sharp, and full of anger as he said, "You're always thinking about yourself. Greedy, selfish, never caring about anyone else." Every word felt like a punch. I looked at Marin, hoping for a flicker of defense, a sign that she remembered the years we had shared, the bond that had been unbreakable. But she just stood there, her eyes down, her face unreadable. I felt a strange, sinking feeling in my chest. How could she stay silent while he tore me apart like this? My own sister, the person I had trusted more than anyone, was letting it happen. The warmth I had felt coming home was gone, replaced by this cold, heavy weight of betrayal. I realized then that I was alone, completely isolated, in a place that should have been my sanctuary. As the conversation continued, Dax didn't even try to hide his intentions. Every word, every glance seemed calculated. He was planting seeds of doubt, small things that could make Maren question her own memories, her own feelings about me. It was subtle, just a comment here, a raised eyebrow there, but I could see what he was doing. He was trying to take control of everything, to make the house and even Maren himself bend to his will. I wanted to argue, to shout, to make him see how wrong he was. But I forced myself to stay calm, though my hands shook and my heart raced. If I gave him a reaction, I knew he would take it as fuel. I had to keep my head clear, even as the humiliation burned inside me. I moved through the house like a ghost that night, touching the walls and furniture that had once held so many happy memories. Each corner reminded me of laughter, of our parents' voices, of Maren and me sharing secrets late into the night. Now, those memories felt distant, almost unreachable. I felt trapped in a house that should have been mine, surrounded by people who seemed determined to turn it against me. Dax's presence was suffocating. He walked around as if he owned everything, ignoring the fact that this was my home too. I caught him glancing at Maren in a way that suggested he was trying to twist her feelings, to convince her that I was in the wrong. And Maren, my sister, was watching it happen without a word. The betrayal cut deeper than Dax's words ever could. By the end of the evening, I realized that this wasn't just about a heated argument or a bad day. This was a calculated effort to push me out, to make me question my place in my own life. And even though I felt small and powerless, a spark of determination began to grow inside me. If they thought they could humiliate me and get away with it, they were wrong. I would find a way to protect what was mine, and make sure they regretted ever trying to take it. I spent the next day quietly moving around the house, trying to make sense of everything. The more I thought about Dax's words and his attitude, the more I realized something didn't add up. He wasn't just angry or controlling. He was planning something bigger. I decided I had to find out the truth before it was too late. I started looking through some old papers in the study, the ones my parents had left behind when the house was passed down to Maren and me. That's when I discovered it. Dax had secretly been trying to refinance the house in his name, making moves to claim it as his own. He had even convinced Maren to sign some papers, though she didn't know what they really meant. My heart sank. If I didn't act fast, he could take control completely, and I might lose the house that had been in my family for decades. I felt a mix of anger and panic. How could someone be so bold, so manipulative? And worse, how could Maren not see it? She trusted him completely, and he was using that trust against both of us. I realized that time was running out. I couldn't wait or hope things would fix themselves. I had to do something immediately if I wanted to save what was mine. I remembered Rhett Halloway, our family lawyer and an old friend from childhood. He had always been honest and careful, someone who understood our family and our history. I called him, explaining everything I had discovered. As I spoke, I could hear the concern in his voice. "Lydia, this isn't just bad behavior," he said. "He's trying to manipulate both the house and your sister. You need to act quickly and make sure he doesn't succeed." Rhett agreed to help me look over the documents and figure out the best way to protect my ownership. Just talking to him made me feel a little less alone. For the first time in days, I felt like I had a plan forming. But the urgency weighed heavily on me. Every hour I waited was an hour Dax could use to strengthen his hold on the house. I spent the evening going over every paper, every signature, every clause, looking for any weakness in Dax's plan. My mind raced, imagining how he would react if he found out I was fighting back. The thought made my stomach tighten, but it also made my determination grow stronger. I realized I couldn't let fear stop me. I had to act carefully, but I had to act fast. By the time night fell, I had made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let Dax take what was mine. He had underestimated me, and he had underestimated how far I was willing to go to protect my home. I knew the battle ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it, and I would make sure he regretted ever trying to take control. I decided not to yell back. Reacting would only give him the moment he wanted. Instead, I made a quiet choice. I would prove what I knew without losing my head. I needed cold facts, not feelings, and I needed them fast. First, I took an inventory. I went room to room and wrote down everything that mattered. Old letters, bills, photo albums, and any paperwork that looked official. I used my phone to take clear photos of each page and each item. I made sure the pictures were neat and easy to read. Then I copied the most important pages into a folder I kept with me, not in the house where anyone could find them. Next, I watched and listened. I paid more attention to small things. If he talked about money or trips, I noted dates and names. If he made a strange phone call, I wrote down the time. I did not spy or break the law. I simply paid attention to what people said around me and wrote it down. Little slips of truth often come out when someone thinks no one is listening. I also checked public records I could find online. County property records and local filings are public. I read what was posted about the house and about past transactions. That gave me a clearer picture of official claims and who had filed what. I printed copies so I would have them ready. I quietly asked a few discreet questions of people I trusted nearby. A neighbor remembered a delivery that did not feel right. A contractor recalled conversations with someone who was not a true owner. These small confirmations stacked up and made the bigger picture stronger. No one needed to know I was asking. The details helped. I gathered financial clues too. I collected mailed statements left around and saved any invoices I found. I made a list of banks and companies that had been mentioned. I did not try to open anyone else's accounts or read private messages. I simply kept every scrap of paper that belonged to the house and organized it. Then I planned how to use what I had. I laid out the documents in order and wrote a simple timeline of events. Each item had a note, where it came from and why it mattered. My plan was not to attack with anger, but to lay out facts so clearly that no one could deny them. I prepared a calm meeting in my mind, the place, the moment, the words I would say. I would show the papers and the timeline. I would ask for answers and expect the truth. If the answers were lies, the papers would show it. Working in secret felt strange and strong. Each small task I finished made me stronger. I stopped feeling like a victim and began to feel like someone who could protect what belonged to her. I was ready to move when the right moment came, and I knew I would not be rash. I would be steady, precise, and unstoppable. That evening, I suggested we have a quiet family dinner in the living room. The table was set, the lights soft, and I acted as if nothing was wrong. I wanted to see how Dax would behave when he thought I wasn't paying full attention. Every word he said, every glance, I watched carefully. I asked small questions about bills and repairs, keeping my voice casual, letting him think I didn't suspect anything. I started dropping little hints, half-truths, and misleading details, just enough to see how he would react. I mentioned an old contract that didn't exist and commented on a payment that had never been made. Dax's face twitched when I spoke. His confidence faltered for a moment, and I could see him trying to cover something. That tiny reaction gave me more information than hours of questioning ever could. I kept the conversation light but pointed. I asked him about repairs he had promised to pay for, pretending I didn't know the full story. He gave vague answers, trying to make it sound like everything was fine. I made mental notes of every slip. Each word, each hesitation, added to the puzzle I was putting together. Then I noticed something worse. Dax had been lying to Marin about the finances. He told her the mortgage and taxes were fully paid, but I knew from the documents I had gathered that some payments were missing or delayed. I could see her nodding along, trusting him completely, unaware that he had been manipulating the truth to make her feel secure while he tried to gain more control. I decided to probe a little further. I asked casually about some bank statements, about which bills had been handled and which were left pending. Dax gave a quick, rehearsed answer, but he left out key details. I pretended to misunderstand him, asking again in a way that made him repeat himself. That's when the lies became clear. I knew now that he thought I still didn't realize his schemes. Watching Marin's reactions was painful. She was completely unaware, trusting him the way she always had. The betrayal stung even more because it wasn't just me he was trying to deceive. It was her too. I felt a mix of anger and sorrow. I realized how careful I needed to be. If I revealed everything too soon, he could cover his tracks. I had to move slowly, one step at a time, while gathering proof that would leave no doubt. By the end of the evening, I had confirmed what I suspected. Dax was lying, and he had no idea how much I knew. The tension in the room was quiet but thick, like a storm waiting to break. I felt a sense of control, a power that came from knowing the truth and being ready to use it. I wasn't rushing, but I was planning. The next steps would have to be precise, careful, and calculated. I had the advantage, and I intended to use it. I decided it was time to set the stage. I invited a few close family friends over for a casual evening at the beach house, keeping it light and friendly. The atmosphere was relaxed on the surface, laughter, small talk, and the smell of food cooking. But inside, I was quietly preparing for what had to happen. Dax, of course, was confident. He moved around the house like he owned it, talking loudly and showing off, thinking everyone was impressed by his authority. He didn't suspect that I had already collected proof of his schemes. I had secretly recorded some of his conversations and gathered all the documents showing his lies and manipulations. Every word he spoke that night would only help me later if I needed it. I kept my own behavior calm, smiling and chatting, letting him underestimate me. Then, carefully, I guided him toward a part of the house away from the others, making it seem accidental. I asked for his help with something in the study, pretending it was trivial. He followed willingly, happy to feel important. Marin and the guests stayed in the living room, unaware that Dax was being separated from them. Once we were alone, I spoke in a calm, measured tone, asking about bills, payments, and agreements. I acted as if I was merely curious, but every question I asked was designed to make him slip, to expose his lies without him realizing it. I let him talk, listening carefully to every word. He bragged about control over the house, thinking no one could challenge him. The arrogance in his voice was clear, and I made mental notes of everything he said. I didn't reveal my hand yet. I waited, letting him believe he had the upper hand. Each moment he spoke carelessly added to the evidence I had already collected. I could see it in his expressions, the little pauses when he realized he might have gone too far, and the quick attempts to recover. It all confirmed what I already knew. He was overconfident and underprepared for what I had planned. After a while, I left the room casually, as if nothing had happened, letting him rejoin the gathering. He walked back with a satisfied smile, completely unaware that I had everything I needed to prove him wrong. Marin continued to chat with the guests, still trusting him, still unaware of the depth of his deception. That night, the tension in the house was quiet but thick. I felt the weight of the next steps pressing down on me, but also a sense of control. I had isolated him, gathered proof, and set the stage perfectly. Everything depended on timing now. I knew the confrontation would come soon, and when it did, there would be no way for him to escape the truth. The calm before the storm was mine to command, and I was ready to act. The moment had finally come. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I asked Marin to join me in the study, away from the guests and Dax. She looked at me curiously, sensing something serious in my tone. "I need to show you something," I said quietly. Her expression softened, trusting me, and I could see she wanted to believe me. I opened the folder I had carefully prepared, laying out the documents, recordings, and timelines in front of her. I kept my voice calm, letting the facts speak for themselves. "Look at this," I said, pointing to the first page. "These are the documents he didn't want you to see. Every payment, every contract, everything he tried to hide." At first, Marin scanned the papers slowly, her eyes widening as she realized the truth. Dax had been lying to her about finances, about the mortgage, about bills he said he had paid. He had even convinced her to sign papers that gave him partial control of the house, all without her understanding what she was agreeing to. She looked up at me, her hand trembling slightly, a mixture of shock and hurt on her face. "Lydia, I didn't know," she whispered. I took a deep breath, knowing that this was the turning point. "He's been manipulating you, Marin, trying to take this house from both of us. But I've confirmed everything legally. The house is ours, and he cannot claim it." I showed her the legal validation Rhett had prepared, the paperwork proving my half-ownership and the illegality of Dax's attempts to claim the property. When we finally confronted him together, Dax's confident smirk vanished. I stayed calm, speaking slowly and clearly, presenting the evidence step by step. He tried to argue, to deny, to twist the story in his favor, but each lie was met with proof. Every false statement crumbled under the weight of documents, recordings, and the legal confirmation I had arranged. I could see him panic. His face turned pale, and his voice cracked as he stumbled over excuses. For the first time, he had no control over the room, no control over Marin, and certainly no control over me. He tried to claim I was exaggerating, but Marin stepped forward, holding the papers I had laid out. "Lydia's right," she said firmly. "I can't believe I didn't see it before, but now I know. You lied to me, Dax. This ends today." The shock on Dax's face was satisfying, but it was more than that. I felt vindicated. Every moment of fear, every hour spent planning and gathering proof, had led to this moment of clarity. Marin and I stood together, side by side, united against the betrayal that had threatened to destroy our family bond. Seeing Marin realize the depth of the deception was powerful. She hugged me tightly, whispering that she was sorry for not trusting me sooner. In that embrace, I felt an immense relief, a sense of justice fulfilled. Dax had tried to control, to manipulate, and to intimidate us, but he had failed completely. That night, as he left the house, defeated and exposed, I felt stronger than ever. The house was safe, our family bond restored, and the weight of betrayal lifted. I realized that standing firm, planning carefully, and facing the truth head-on had given me more power than I had ever imagined. For the first time since this nightmare began, I could breathe freely, knowing I had protected what was mine and proven that I would never be controlled or silenced. After the confrontation, the house felt different, lighter somehow, as if the walls themselves were relieved. Dax's face was red, his confidence gone. Everyone who had been close to him could see the truth. His reputation within the family was completely shattered. He tried to explain, tried to make excuses, but no one listened. The lies, the manipulation, and the betrayal were out in the open, and he had no choice but to leave the house immediately. Watching him go, I felt a strange mix of anger and satisfaction. Justice had been served, and the house was finally safe. Marin and I stayed behind, sitting together in the living room, surrounded by the familiar furniture and photos that now felt more like home than ever. There was a long pause, just the sound of the ocean in the distance, before she finally spoke. "I can't believe he did all that," she said quietly, her voice trembling. I reached out and took her hand, feeling the warmth and trust we had lost for a while returning. "I know," I replied softly. "But he's gone now, and we're still here. That's what matters." For the first time in days, I felt the tension leaving my shoulders. Marin and I talked for hours, sharing feelings we hadn't expressed in years. We laughed about silly childhood memories, cried over the pain we had felt, and finally admitted the ways we had hurt each other without meaning to. That long, honest conversation healed much more than just the wounds caused by Dax. It repaired the unspoken tension that had quietly built up over the years. We hugged tightly, promising to never let anyone come between us again. Sitting there, I reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal had cut deep, but it had also shown me my own strength. I realized that I could stand firm, think clearly under pressure, and protect what was mine. The fear and anger I had felt didn't weaken me. They made me more aware, more determined. I had faced a manipulative person who thought he could control me, and I had not only survived but won. That night, I walked through the house, touching the walls, the windows, and the doors, remembering all the times Marin and I had grown up there. Everything felt familiar, safe, and mine again. The house wasn't just a building, it was a part of our history, a part of us, and now it was secure. For the first time since the nightmare began, I could rest. I had reclaimed my home, repaired my bond with my sister, and learned how strong I could be when I refused to be pushed aside. The betrayal had hurt, but it had also taught me the value of trust, courage, and standing up for myself. Marin and I finally felt united again, ready to move forward together, stronger than ever. The next evening, I decided to host a small gathering on the beach. It was simple, just a few close friends, the sound of waves, and the soft glow of the setting sun. The air felt calm, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe without tension pressing down on my chest. The house, once filled with fear and uncertainty, now felt warm, safe, and welcoming. Laughter and quiet conversation replaced the weight of betrayal, and I realized how much lighter life could feel when honesty and truth were on your side. Marin stayed close, her hand brushing mine occasionally as we walked along the sand. I could see the relief in her eyes, but also a new determination. "Lydia," she said, "I promise I will never let anyone, not even him, come between us again. I see now how easy it was for him to manipulate me, and I won't let it happen again." Her words touched me deeply, a reminder of the bond we had always shared and how strong it had become after surviving such a storm together. I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the humiliation, the isolation I had felt. It had been painful, and for a while, I wondered if I would ever trust my family and my own instincts again. But sitting there with Marin, looking at the gentle waves reflecting the last colors of the sun, I realized something important. Betrayal, though painful, could be a lesson in strength. Facing it head-on, refusing to be pushed aside, and standing firm had shown me how much power I had within myself. It wasn't just about the house. It was about proving to myself that I could overcome fear and manipulation without losing my integrity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a sense of closure. The beach, the house, the memories, they all belonged to me, not just in ownership but in spirit. I had protected them, preserved the family bond, and reclaimed my place. Marin and I walked back toward the house, hand in hand, talking quietly about plans for the future, about the summers we would enjoy together, and the life we would protect from anyone trying to interfere. Everything felt complete. The tension of the past weeks had been replaced by a quiet joy, a peaceful strength. I had faced betrayal, uncovered lies, and come through it stronger, with my family closer than ever. The house was more than walls and rooms. It was a symbol of perseverance, trust, and courage. That night, as I climbed into bed, I looked around my home and felt the weight lift fully from my shoulders. The fear, the anger, the hurt, it was all behind me. I could finally rest, knowing I had defended what was mine and stood up for myself. That night, I slept in my beach house with my head held high, finally free from the shadow of someone who never deserved my trust.